I wasn't intending to do any more videos on Trump, at least in the foreseeable future. He says so many things, you just can't possibly react to everything. I see him today with the new president, or I think the new prime minister of Canada. Is it Chuck Carney? And he always says things first, and then he gets to be held accountable after. And it's funny because I'm not even talking about that one, for instance. I was going to, but I thought, no, I can't do it to every video. But something's just come up, and I haven't even watched the entirety of the video. It just made me laugh immediately because this guy's reaction is exactly how I am all the time when I watch Trump. I just can't stand the guy, you know. And this is Ford. It says here Canada, Ontario's Premier Doug Ford. I don't know all of politics. I thought he was Toronto's mayor. I'm not sure if that's what he is. Like Toronto, of course, is part of Ontario. From my understanding, so I'm not sure if he's the mayor of there or if he's bigger than that. I don't know what the positions are. Anyway, I don't want to digress too far, make too many points there unnecessarily. But as soon as he speaks, it's like anyone that's just got a rational mind will be thinking the same thing. But what's great is it's when you've got politicians, people who have influence and a platform, they actually use their platform to just be honest and transparent. There's no point sort of placating someone and just appeasing them. It's like, for me, you don't get anywhere. You're just encouraging them. So this is perfect. This is exactly his reaction is exactly what I'm like when I think of Trump. I'm like, God damn, this guy drives me nuts.
President Trump's tariffs. This guy drives me nuts. I just get wound up. You know, he's sitting there. He drives it. Here I go off my speech. I always.
I literally rewound it a couple of times because I couldn't. It was like, this guy drives me nuts. And it's like, I think it's our most.
This guy drives me nuts. I just get wound up. You know, he's sitting there. He drives it. Here I go off my speech. I always.
The funny thing is, because he's so wild and reckless, I think he does. I think people come in with an idea. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about that. But because he drives you so nuts, you end up derailing what you was going to say because you've now got to address the craziness that it's the Trump campaign. You know, the way he is and stuff, and then all these aides. It's quite funny. Like you can see it ahead of time. You know, he's there for 4 years. If he sees out his term, and then the people who support his craziness and they think they're protected, they're going to be held accountable later. So I just find it absolutely hilarious that they think they've got this 4 years of immunity and they're not going to be held accountable after. Because to be honest, what's the thing he does? Oh, I can't remember what's that word. I can't remember what he does. You know when they leave the office and they protect them. I can't remember what the word is. He makes a pardon. Yeah, he's probably going to pardon all of them, and they know it. That's why they're reckless.
My team starts getting nervous when I go off the teleprompter. And by the way, I'll tell you one thing. We all have tough jobs, right? We all have tough jobs. The person with the toughest job in this room is the teleprompter operator, because I'm all over the place right now. She's going up and down. And anyways, you know, what drives me nuts, you see this guy on TV. We don't need Canada. Really? I guess you don't need our high-grade nickel that they use 57% of their nickel to build their military, their aerospace, and manufacturing. Imagine if we never gave them our high-grade nickel. Or my friend Scott Moe out in Saskatchewan, if he cut off the potash, that 87% of the farmers down in the U.S. use Saskatchewan potash, or the uranium coming from Saskatchewan as well. And you just think of this, uranium gets refined in Port Hope, in your area, David, and then gets shipped down to the U.S. And imagine if they didn't have the uranium. They wouldn't have any nuclear power down there. Or, of course, what would they do if they didn't have our electricity? And 1.5 million homes and businesses in New York and Minnesota and Michigan, they wouldn't have any power. And I talked to all these governors, no matter if it's Republican or Democrat. And even the Republicans, behind closed doors, because they're terrified of their leader, that's pretty crazy in itself, that totally disagree with attacking their closest friends and allies. You know, we always believe in something called the AMCAN Fortress, the American-Canadian Fortress. We put a ring around it. We'd be unstoppable anywhere in the entire world. We'd be the wealthiest, richest two nations in the world and the safest two nations. And, you know, all he's trying to do, and we wish him, I forget about political stripes, by the way. We have a prime minister down there, and he's going to be sitting down, and he's going to give it everything he can. This is a time to unite the country. Not people saying, oh, I'm leaving the country, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that. You know, united we stand, divided we fall. And we have to be united Canada together to fight President Trump's tariff.
I think he bit his tongue because the Prime Minister, as he just said, is currently in talks with Trump, and I don't think it helps to call Trump an absolute buffoon. I think he wanted to go there. He steadied himself because, you know, politicians know how to compose themselves, articulate, and stay on point. And I think personally, because those talks are ongoing, I think he stemmed it and he just pointed out where the influence is. But yeah, even the Prime Minister, when he spoke to Trump, he was making it clear that some property is not for sale, like Buckingham Palace. You can't buy Buckingham Palace. And Trump's like, true. And he said, and Canada cannot be bought. He said, but our ties can be strong. And he was pointing out that. And Trump was just sitting there nodding along like, yeah. And he was agreeing. It's like, but he always has to come in at the beginning, though, and just make some stupid proclamations that don't even make sense. That's what Trump's all about, you know? Yeah, nothing he makes sense. He just seems to make wild, grand statements. Apparently, at the moment, he's talking about the fact that he doesn't care about the cost of what he considers unnecessary products. So, for instance, things like toys, Barbie dolls, things like that. And it's like, that is everyday items, though. They're tangible items that people use in their daily lives, you know, as gifts and all sorts of things. So they actually are meaningful. When you have to go and buy a product, how much is it going to cost you? But he doesn't think that matters. He's saying you don't need that many Barbie dolls. That's his answer to it. So he doesn't care. And then he said, and then apparently he's talking about the fact that energy prices are now low. You know, grocery prices are low. And then everybody looks around. Like, obviously, I'm not in America, so I only hear back the feedback. But the feedback coming back is nothing's low. So I don't know who he's trying to convince. It's like just by saying something doesn't make it true. And that's what Trump's all about. He thinks if he says something, that sort of like just makes it automatically true and valid. He doesn't like being held accountable. So when he gets challenged, he goes quiet and ignores the person challenging him or talks over him in riddles. It reminds me a bit, like in the UK, Boris Johnson, where he just mumbled and bumbled his way through anything. He couldn't possibly be wrong. It's never his fault. So there's no accountability. And it's just constantly bumbling your way through everything. Just to, I see it as a way distraction tactic. They bumble their way through on purpose, so you forget what the initial thing was. Very manipulative. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I actually thought the video was going to go far worse, and I'm sure if another video surfaces where he's talking again in future, I'm sure, having started his remarks where this guy does my head in, if there's no progress politically between Canada and America, the fact that this video started that when there is talks at the moment, that tells you that in the future he's going to be even more outspoken. I've seen him talk on Trump a few times before, and he doesn't really he doesn't hold his punches. You know, he will say what he thinks, but when he said he drives me nuts, it's like, yeah, that got me as well. But yeah, this isn't going to be some long-winded rant about Trump, because you can go all day. You can do a whole memoir on Trump, couldn't you? It's just crazy at this point. It's just like, what realistically, it's like, what's he going to say and do next? Because like, he's just a wrecking ball. I made this point before, like, to someone when I was talking today earlier. I said about like the fact that like in my own being, I am unpredictable. But if you actually, because the way I am, but Trump's unpredictable too. But the reality is, what you can do, if someone's unpredictable, you can then predict the unpredictable. Like if you think someone's goes out, and that's what you can do with Trump. So you can think, what's the norm? What's the normal way of behaving? And then what's a bit more out of character from the average person? And that way you can then actually predict. So when you watch Trump, you know he's not going to do anything that's normal. He's not a normal person. So he's always going to do things that are out of character and wayward. So like, for instance, I wouldn't even be surprised if he sends himself to the moon. He can then proclaim he's the first he's the first leader, leader of a nation to reach the moon. That's not out of the realm of possibility. Now, you would argue before Trump took office that would be outrageous thing to say. I don't think anyone hearing that's going to think that's that outrageous. You go, actually, I can see this guy being on the moon. And then I can see NASA not refusing to bring him back. I mean, I'm only just thinking that now, but now I'm actually thinking send Trump to the moon. He already had an AI imposed video of image or whatever it was on his social media platform where he was he made himself the Pope. And I thought, this is him. It's just images of grandeur. That's what he has. So the fact that he's now the president of America, he's already been once. I'm sure he's looking, thinking, what else can I do in this lifetime? I'm sure I could leave it. I could be a general and lead people into the war. I'm sure that's how he sees himself. Like all these images, and especially people from history, and I think he positions himself like that. So if you have that mindset of Trump, and you just think this guy just wants to be a martyr in some way, he wants to be immortalized. I think he wants to be a god. He literally wants to be a deity. So how's he going to achieve that? And then you have to think, how grand does his schemes have to be? Because he has to be different to norm. Otherwise, he doesn't stand out. But he's going about it all the wrong ways. But in his head, he's intelligent. But you've got an idiot, a fool, really. Posturing as someone that's intelligent and then making some stupid, reckless decisions that really it just doesn't work. So like you start tariffing the world to say America's great, everybody's going to bow to us, and they're going to be desperate to work with us. And then you get other countries just start boycotting America in a way, or even if the country, the leaders don't and the politicians don't, the people do. So you're seeing it throughout Europe, for instance, and I think Australia is doing similar, where they're actually actively looking for who owns the company, like who produced this food, even if it's just snacks. They're actually going out their way to boycott American products. I think you're seeing it in Mexico as well. But you do, because you start seeing people feel they're victims of something, or they feel like they should support these ones that are being attacked. So the way Mexicans were being treated, a lot of people didn't like it. It was disrespectful. So people then started thinking, well, I want to support Mexico. Let's get Mexican products. Like, what products come from America? And Trump doesn't see that. He just seems to think America's great. Everybody's going to fall all over themselves. Saw a video earlier with Vance. I haven't actually saved it, so I can't show it. The vice president, and he was making a joke about like the World Cup coming to America. Now that's a huge sport around the world. It's not big in America, but the rest of the world is absolutely huge. It's the pinnacle of sport. It's bigger than the Super Bowl. Whether Americans want to agree, it's like numbers are crazy. It's billions. So there's an awful lot of people coming into America for the World Cup whenever it is, and from many different nations. And the real problem is America is not really it's a hostile nation right now in terms of having visitors. And he did make a little joke. As soon as the World Cup's finished, these people must leave. And he was trying to laugh, but he was like, you know what he was doing. Even if you stay a day longer or whatever it is, you're going to get deported to these concentration camp pretty much. That's what America is right now. You go to America, you don't know if you're just going to... This is the problem. You travel to America as a foreign national, even if it's for a holiday, like a tourist visa, you've got like, there's 3 options. No, 4 options. Let's say there's 4 options, probably. One is you get to enter, which is the whole plan in the first place. The other is you get deported back. So you don't even get through border control. They just send you back on a plane. You go back to where you come from. The other is the detainment. Do you get detained in America, or do they send you to one of these concentration camps like, I don't know, they're doing it with different countries, isn't it? I don't know if it's with Ecuador or Chile or somewhere. I can't remember where they're sending people, but they're sending them to South American countries, which are dangerous. You lose all your dignity and your human rights. And that is the risk you take entering America right now. And yet Trump thinks, no, everybody's happy to come to America. Tourism is as high as it's ever been. It's like, no, it's not. How can it possibly be as high as it's ever been when there's a genuine fear that you won't even get through border control, and you may even get deported somewhere like that's like hell on earth? Like, why on earth would you risk that just to enter the United States of America? And he's deluded because he thinks that everybody wants to. Anyway. That's what they do. So they talk nonsense. They think everything is the sun shines out their arse. And like I say, they think everybody... Like a lot of people probably do fall for what he says because they're just... they're up his arse, really. So you have to take a step back, get away from that, pull his pants up, look at his face expressions when he's talking, listen to the words coming out of his mouth, and ask yourself, does that make sense? Because none of it is actually tangible. Everything can be questioned, and none of it is true. So everything coming out of Trump's mouth is a complete fabrication. It's lies, 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 lies. You've seen it already, and I'm not here to just keep going about Trump. I've got better things to do. But you see it anyway, like on his campaign trail. He says he's not going to do this, he's not going to do that. We're going to bring prices down day one. We're going to end this, we're going to end that. And then he gets challenged on it, and he says, I never said that. I never said I was going to do that. And then there's video clips of him saying that, and it's like that's what he's all about. I don't want to go on my personal life, but I'm not going to call people out personally or anything like that. But when you come up against people who are influenced by others, a lot of the time the decisions they make were not necessarily their decisions, but it was something they followed through because someone told them to do it. So they thought, okay, I'll do that because it seems like wise advice. So they do it. But they actually forget that they did it, and they don't really know the nuances around it, which is where I think Trump comes. Either he does it all when he's an absolute crazy lunatic who's incredibly manipulative, or he is just a puppet that does it whatever other people hire more powerful or whatever or influential tell him to do, and then he does it. Because in that situation, you wouldn't know the ins and outs. You wouldn't even know the facts. You're just following whatever, and then when you're challenged on it, it doesn't make sense. That's Trump. So either he is he's either incompetent and very manipulative and narcissistic, or he's compromised. It's one or the other. Either he's compromised by someone else and he's doing what they want and he's the face of it, or he's an incredibly toxic person. But either way, he's not fit for purpose. And that's really, really dangerous considering someone that has a lot of power. Yeah. Anyway, I've talked about American politics before, saying it's not fit for purpose. It needs to be sorted out. Really, I'm not going to go a whole spiel here. You can just see my previous video on that one. But yeah, it's just interesting to see people actually speaking up, articulating their grievances. But yeah, Trump.